All right, everyone. Hello and welcome into Super Bowl Sunday, of which the Minnesota Vikings are not a participant in today's game. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the opportunity today as Vikings fans to witness Kevin O'Connell in his last bit of action on the sideline with the Los Angeles Rams in today's big game before he is officially introduced as the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings tomorrow on Monday. And it's been a very interesting week for Kevin O'Connell as the next head coach of the Minnesota Vikings and the current offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams, as he both prepares for a Super Bowl the entirety of this past week and seemingly assembling a coaching staff in the shadows for the Minnesota Vikings when he takes over that job tomorrow. So today we're going to get caught up in all of the headlines that we have missed. I've been out for a couple of days attending to IRL activities. So we're going to talk about all of the changes that we've seen, some of the hirings, and we're going to end it on a Kirk Cousins discussion because that's always fun. Because that's the flavor of the morning today. Before I decided to make this video and press record, we had a little bit of news from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network regarding Kirk Cousins and his status as the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings this year, and it has sent Viking social media into a tizzy. Who could have saw that coming, right? But let's get into the coaching staff changes because I think that is the most important news of the day. So if you remember my last video, we talked about defensive changes coming for the Minnesota Vikings given the short list of potential defensive coordinator candidates that we had received via reporting. And those candidates were Sean Desai of the Bears, Anthony Weaver of the Ravens, Aubrey Pleasant of the Lions. It felt like at the time Aubrey Pleasant was going to be the favorite to get the job. Jason LaCanfora put out a tweet talking about the potential of Mike Pettin being named the next defensive coordinator. Everything pointed to the Vikings switching to some sort of 3-4 scheme from a 4-3 with all of these names on the short list for defensive coordinator candidates. And it turns out, despite the new hire not coming from that list, it looks like we may be switching to some sort of a 3-4 anyway, because the next defensive coordinator is going to be Ed Donatel for the Minnesota Vikings. He will be the new defensive coordinator, joining Kevin O'Connell on the staff. Former Broncos coach, Vic Fangio understudy, very experienced guy. I think like 42 years of coaching, if I remember what I read from his Wikipedia page. So if you look at the Vic Fangio defense, he runs like a 3-4 under, which is a variation of like a 4-2, all sorts of disguised fronts. No particular personnel really needed to thrive other than corners, which I found interesting. I found this tweet from Luke Braun, who is the host of the Locked On Vikings podcast on the Locked On Network. He did us the favor of watching some of Vic Fangio's defensive tape and came to the realization that you need corners for this to be successful, which made kind of a revelation, seeing as how the Broncos passed on quarterbacks last year in the draft in favor of Patrick Surtain. And that kind of leads me to believe that the domino effect going from Ed Donatel switching to a sort of 3-4 defense variant, needing a corner, which we have none of currently other than Cam Dantzler, kind of feels like we are going to be pigeonholed into needing to take a corner with the 12th overall pick in this upcoming draft in April. So that's something to keep an eye out, but it looks like Ed Donatel is going to be the next defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. That means a few people are going to be leaving his coaching staff here. Andre Patterson is taking a job with the New York Giants under new coach Brian Daboll. The New York Giants are assembling quite the quality coaching staff for this year. So it's going to be put up or shut up time for Daniel Jones. And it sounds like they believe in him. They're putting a really good personnel around him. I believe he's going to have finally a coaching. I think Joe Judge was a meme last year. Everything about him just screamed like it wasn't going to work. Like he was Urban Meyer without the controversies, if I could put it that way. So Andre Patterson takes the job in New York with the Giants. That kind of left, when that announcement was made, it kind of left Vikings fans sort of pondering the future of Danielle Hunter with the Minnesota Vikings, because, those guys are as close can be in terms of friendship. So, but that's a decision that they got to make coming up pretty soon before that roster bonus kicks in. The news also came out this past few days that Keenan McCardell is going to be retained as the wide receivers coach for the Minnesota Vikings. I was so elated to hear that, and I know many of you are going to be as well. I think that is a great hold for Kevin O'Connell going into this year, working with the same group. I think we can give some credit to Keenan McCardell allowing KJ Osborne to flourish last season, and hopefully it just continues to go on from there. So excited about that. It looks like Wes Phillips, the son of Wade Phillips, no doubt, is expected to join Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota as the offensive play caller / passing game coordinator. So that is one of those things where you see, all kinds of scenarios. Coaches leave their previous teams and they poach a few people from that team that they came from to join them at the new destination. One coach actually did spurn us this past few days. Deshae Townsend chooses the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Minnesota Vikings. He originally sort of had a verbal agreement with the Vikings to be the next secondary coach for this defense, but it looks like he is going to join Doug Peterson in Jacksonville. He has changed his mind. Also, we will be seeing Mike Pettin joining the staff under Ed Donatel to join the coaching staff on defense. And this is an interesting hire. Jason La Canfora originally put out a tweet suggesting that Mike Pettin was the favorite to become defensive coordinator. But it looks like he was wrong about that, but also kind of right at the same time, because he's not going to be in charge of anything. But I think that this is a good hire in a sense that it's an experienced coach. He has head coaching experience, defensive coordinator experience, knows the 3-4 defense. Another experienced mind helping with the transition to what is likely going to be an entirely new defensive scheme for this football team is probably one of the better decisions that you can make. And I talked to some Browns fans and in my group chat that live in the area and have been watching Cleveland Browns football forever. They actually do kind of like Mike Pettin, despite his limited success in Cleveland when he was the head coach here. So I know a lot of Vikings fans were like they wanted nothing to do with Mike Pettin, but in this role, I think that this is okay, so I'm willing to accept that. So we went over all of the coaching changes. It looks like they're forming a pretty good staff. I would say it's just going to depend on how everything looks, after free agency and the draft, and what kind of roster are they going to enter their first season with. But I'm excited about the Ed Donatel hire. I'm excited about the fact that we're keeping Keenan McCardell. It sucks to lose Andre Patterson, but I think as I posted on Twitter, when that news was announced, and if you don't follow me on Twitter for more in the moment reactions to things, you should do that at Skullhio on Twitter, same way it's spelled here. I kind of had a feeling that Andre Patterson wasn't going to survive the coaching changes that were happening in Minnesota this year, because he was a friend and a sort of loyalist to Mike Zimmer, if you will. So, it seems like anybody that had a relationship or was close to Mike Zimmer was never realistically going to be kept on board, because if the goal is to completely clean slate and make all these changes, have a completely different vision for this team going forward, you have to cut all those ties and loose ends. So it kind of made sense. It sucks, but it makes sense that Andre Patterson is moving on. So that covers all of the coaching changes. We are now up to speed regarding all of that information. So let's close out by tackling the most controversial topic of the Minnesota Vikings offseason so far, and that is what to do with Kirk Cousins. And according to Tom Pelissero today on NFL Network, he says, quote, all indications at this point are Cousins being the quarterback in 2022. So, he brings up the relationship with Kevin O'Connell, their previous work experience, how they've all had really nice things to say about each other publicly during available media interviews, Cousins and O'Connell. It seems like that at face value, that report makes sense. And I think it kind of does. But I also think that there's some plausible deniability here. And I also think that Tom Pelissero isn't making a report of confirmation. He's making a report of speculation, because if you pay attention to the keywords that he said, all indications at this point, which means things can change. So I don't think that this is a confirmation of anything. I think you're going to have to wait if you're a Kirk Cousins fan, or if you want him to be retained, whatever the situation may be. You're going to need to wait for a report to specifically say, can confirm or confirms that Kirk Cousins is going to be the quarterback for this season, whether or not that's beyond 2022 or not. But you're going to need, I would say, call me back when Tom Pelissero or somebody else, Chris Mortensen, Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, Chad Graff, one of the local writers for the Minnesota Vikings that cover the beat, if they use the phrasing or the words can confirm or confirm, at that point I would start to take it seriously. This still to me sounds like PR speculation, trying to drive up trade values. Kirk Cousins' trade value did go up significantly today, because it sounds like Derek Carr is going to be taken off the market as the Raiders are working towards an extension for him. Carson Wentz sounds like he's going on the trade market, potentially could even be released. So I think you're going to get more desired teams looking at Kirk Cousins than you are Carson Wentz, just my opinion, throwing that out there. But that report, what Tom Pelissero had to say today on NFL Network, sent all of us into a spin, which it's going to keep happening until the situation is resolved. So we will find out in the next 5 weeks. Things are going to start to move a lot faster starting tomorrow. I think that you're going to see things happen in less than 2 weeks concerning this roster. Danielle Hunter, the other veterans that are taking up a lot of salary cap space because they got to free up money. They got to do it some way, somehow. And changes are going to continue to come. Excited about the 3-4 defense. Let me know what you think about all the coaching hires. Is Ed Donatello your preferred defensive coordinator candidate? What do you think about potentially switching to a 3-4? If you want more football insight, more X's and O's, I recommend going to the Score North Spotify page. Hear me out. I know a lot of people don't like them, but I happen to be a regular listener. I think their content is very good and it's very entertaining. But the episode with Alex Boone, who I think is on every Tuesday for them, every Tuesday is a great listen for him because the insight that he gives you as a player is phenomenal, or former player, excuse me. Go listen to him talk about Vic Fangio and his version of the 3-4 under with, disguised as a 4-2. I think that really breaks it down nicely on what you can expect from this defense going forward, if that is the case and that is the direction that they go. So let me know what you think about the coaching hires, Kirk Cousins rumors, everything above. Thank you once again for joining me, and as always, I will see you in the next one.